Hey there, just a quick reminder we have a mentorship program if you're looking for personalized coaching and mentorship to help guide you to the next level of your interior design business, whatever that might look like for you, whether it's processes and procedures or what services to offer to how to incorporate wellness, intention, or spirituality into your projects. Come join us over at designcoven.com/join. Or if you're just in search to connect with other like minded interior designers, you can join our free community, also located at designcoven.com/join. Hey there, we have a bonus episode today. I was going to make this a typical Tuesday episode, but once Tiarnie and I started talking, we really got into the eclipse that's happening. So we've got an eclipse portal happening on May 1st with the new moon in Taurus, going through the full moon in Scorpio, which is, in 2 weeks from that new moon. So I thought it'd be better timing wise to release this episode so that you can prepare yourself for the eclipse and just the energy that is surrounding this. And then Tiani also has a program on her website if you wanted to dig a little bit deeper, take a look at your astrological chart. And I also suggest pulling your chart for this episode because we dive in to the chart as well. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that there are some swearing. There's some swearing happening in this episode. So if you are listening with little ones, this might be an episode to listen with a headset or to listen at another time. And that's it. I hope you enjoy. You're listening to the Holistic Interior Design Podcast. This is a podcast that guides you as a new or inspiring independent interior designer navigating your entrepreneurial path. Here, with my over 20 years experience, I will share my holistic approach to design with intention and ancient practices, including feng shui, all incorporating mind, body, and spirit into my design projects. You will also learn from seasoned interior designers as they give strategies and insight of how they built their businesses and continue to work in the field. Together, we will discover supportive trade partners, new ideas, creatives, and inspiring artists from around the world. I am your host, Rachel Lorraine Crawford. All righty, welcome back. We have Tiani joining us today on Bewitching the Home. I am going to go ahead and open our space. I'm going to ring our bell, light our candle, pull us a card, and share what brew we're enjoying. So just taking a moment to get centered into our bodies, becoming present in the moment. And I, of course, am lighting our candle, connecting to our higher selves with the fire spirit, any ancestors, wisdom. And I've dedicated this beeswax candle to our work. So always have our candle with us from Mithras. Go ahead and pull us a card. I always pull a deck that I feel called to, and today it's my tried and true Rider-Waite Coleman Smith deck that I first purchased when I was 17. This is this is the one I use all the time. So let me go ahead and pull us a card today. Oh, we have the Six of Cups, which is so perfect for this deck. So really reconnecting to childhood, connecting to memories, connecting to that space of wonder, the space of, I almost feel like this is just a beautiful space of innocence. And we'll dive into a little bit of that fourth house that Tiani is going to talk to us about. And it's just like this bringing us up, bringing us back to home, but in a very soft, gentle, and caring way. And speaking of soft and gentle, I love connecting with the cups, of course, with water and liquids. And today I'm nourishing myself with a kombucha, and it's Nova, as always. And it's the mint watermelon. So good. So it's in the afternoon, so I'm indulging a little bit in a little alcoholic kombucha Tiani, what do you got over there?
Well, Starbucks. I'm just drinking tea because it's the morning here, so I'm just having my cup of tea.
Ah, beautiful. Yeah, so Tiani's in Australia. So we do have a time difference. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I always start off by asking, what is home to you? What's home for you right now?
It's always wherever I am for me because my heart is my home and my body is my home and it's my vessel. So I find that I can be at home wherever I go, wherever you go, there you are. So that's just been a practice of mine for a long time, is not having something separate. And I think that as we go along today, when I share about my own fourth house, it's because I don't have anything in it. So the universe actually is my home. So I've found comfort in Mother Earth and comfort in nurturing my own soul and heart, that I'm always supported and I'm always held, no matter what location, no matter what actual physical space. So home for me is always just myself.
I love that. And Tiani, I've just been a fan of yours from like the moment I saw you on, I think it was an Instagram story, and like you're just the way you speak and the way you just cut through it all. There's no like BS. It's just like, here's what it is, and you're straight. And I'm just like, yes, like, I just love that about you. And so I wanted to share you with everybody here because you're always my go-to. And it's like, okay, what the heck is happening in space and with the planets? And it's like I can always count on you. I can always go to your stories. I can go to your feed. And it's just like you've always got like the 411 for us. But I would love for you to go into your origin story. Like, tell us how you got involved in all this. I want to know all of it.
Right? I mean, I love looking at all your visual appeasing stuff is to my Venusian heart. So I love watching your stories and your beautiful interior, gorgeous things. I'm like, gosh, if you were in Australia, I'd need you to do like space for me. I could hold all of my circles and things in space that you curate with magic. So the feeling's very mutual. Thank you.
Of course.
So yes, I'm very no bullshit. I'm a Taurus with lots of Taurus placements. So, and I've been in this, what I like to call the spiritual entertainment industry for, over 20 years. So I've watched everything sort of come and go and always sort of still been on my own island within the culture because I don't really resonate with a lot of it because it's just to make money, which I'm not cool with. So, but ultimately I've been into astrology since I was 9, thanks to a transit happening in my own chart. The planet of astrology is Uranus. It's also Mercury as well, but Uranus is the more modern planet. And Uranus was going through my 3rd house when I was a young girl. And that means that, the 3rd house is the mind and being stimulated. And often, some people might have Uranus go through their 3rd house when they're 30 or 50 or 17, but I had it at a young age. So it just stimulated me straight away. Like, Uranus is revolutionary. He's the sky god of Uranus, and he was giving me insight and information. And all I cared about my whole life was, what sign are you? What sign's your parents? What sign's your kids? What sign's your cat? What sign's your dog? Like, it's the only thing I remember. And I do have a very photographic memory around it. Like, I've just recently sort of like gone, I think I might be a little bit of an astrology savant. However, I do want to not claim that, because I think Leo King, who is American, who I do love, he is very incredible with stuff. Like, his mind it blows me away. And he's like, I think he's a few years younger than me. But
okay.
So for me, I just see the chart, I feel the chart, I will remember everyone's signs. If I've met you 10 years ago, I'll still remember that you're a Cancer. I'm watching Superstore for the 3rd time because it's just the funniest fucking show in the world. And I still remember that Glenn is a Cancer because I Google everyone's signs straight away. I need to know who everyone is in real life. And, astrology is just my language. It's just the way I speak. It's the way I live. I'm an embodied astrology teacher, an embodied astrologer. It's every day, all day, every day, all I talk is astrology. It's sort of like any question you have, for me, the answer is astrology. It's all in our charts. When we understand that astrology is this incredible tool of self-acceptance, and also acceptance and tolerance of other people, because when we understand astrology and the archetypes, so astrology is more than, oh, you're a Taurus or you're a Libra. Like, it's more than labeling someone a sign, because people aren't signs. We all have 12 signs in our zodiac chart. So we are all 12 archetypes. And if we move away from labeling people, but we then have the understanding of, oh, that person's moon's in this sign. Oh, that's why we don't really click, because my moon's in this watery, like, emotional, blah, blah, blah. And that's in this fiery, like, rah, like, so it's like, oh, okay, I see that. And there's an understanding and a tolerance, acceptance. So, there's less judgment and more love, because you can understand people's blueprints. Even when people don't understand them themselves, an astrologer knows. Like, an astrologer can pick up people's signs and pick up those things because of the way people communicate. So, it's just a language that I've been speaking forever, and now it's my full-time gig, and I love it. And I wouldn't. Once you open to working with the planets and understanding them, and understanding cycles, and understanding your own cycles within your own chart, so a micro in the macro cycles, life, changes forever. Like, your life will never be the same again.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um, so I would love to kind of dig into maybe some things that you can give us some insight. And I want to encourage everybody, if you haven't already pulled out your charts or pulling up your charts, you can always pause this and pull your chart real fast. And Tiarnie, is there a certain website that you trust the most out of, and we'll put the link in the show notes as well.
So it's always just astro.com.
Astro.com. Okay. So yeah, so we'll have everyone pull their chart so they can take a look at it, see what's going on. And I love that you mentioned, we all have all 12 signs going on. We're never just one particular thing. And I feel like there's some key aspects that you can give us on where to look in our chart to get certain things that are connecting us to our homes, to our possessions, to, all those things that we surround ourselves with, and just to give us some extra insight so that we can understand, like, why we do certain things, or what clicks, or, all of that sort of info. So where do you think we should start? And Tiarnie has my chart too, so we'll be able to kind of use that as an example to kind of help guide us as we navigate all of this.
So there's a couple of things that we look at for the home. Firstly, we do look at the fourth house, which was so pertinent to the card that you pulled. You said the Six of Cups is around childhood memories.
Yeah.
Is that right?
That's that childhood card.
Of course, I made that shit up. So the fourth house is the base of the chart. So it's the darkest part of the chart. It's the midnight part of the chart. So ultimately, it's the anchor. We look at the chart. If we look at the chart, it's obviously a round circle. There's 4 main points to the chart, which is our ascendant, descendant, midheaven, and IC. And so we look at those 4 points as the times of the day. So your rising sign, your ascending sign, is literally what was going on when you were born. Yeah. So that can be morning, night, whenever you were born, like there is a sign rising on the horizon, right? So our 6 a.m. point is like our sunrise, is what I'm trying to say. Sunrise. So sunrise is our ascendant and sunset is our descendant. So everything is polarity in astrology, like ascendant and descendant. So they're opposite signs. So if you're a Libra rising, you'll be a Aries descendant. If you're a Gemini rising, you'll be a Sag descendant. And then at midday, we have the highest point of the chart, which is our career, and which is our ambition and success and goals and where we're heading. So it's directly when the sun is above us, right? So, and we know what that feels like when the sun is at midday, it's at its peak, right? So that is our midheaven, our career. And then directly underneath that, of course, would be midnight, which is our IC, Imicoli. It is this nadir. So it's around midnight. And we see the midnight part of the chart as the roots of the tree. So it's the underground. It's what's hidden. Yeah. So there's a few houses that show like hidden sort of shadowy sort of stuff, but we'll look at the fourth house because it is related to your childhood. It is related to your home. It is related to your ancestry, how you grew up. It can be where you grew up. So for some people, like with a lot of planets in their fourth house, they might find that they're very connected to family tradition. They might even work with their family. They might, have stayed in the same area. And of course, astrology is so layered. This is, of course, very general because there can be a million different things going on in your charts that tell another story. But in general, that fourth house really does show, our childhood and our home, but it's the beginning, it's the roots. It's ruled by Cancer naturally, and Cancer is, it's ruled by the moon. So what feels like home for us, it's the unconscious part of us. It's what are you doing at home when no one else is looking, right? Like that's what it comes down to. It's when you're really uninhibited. It's your private life, it really is this sort of, I call it the soul's home as well, because I find that, if just say you're having a renovation in your home, I find that you're also having an inner renovation. Now, you might not have you might not have planets in your fourth house, but the planets in the sky are always moving around, right? So you might have planets in the sky activating your fourth house. Now, this has been very true for me when we had renovations in our house. I had a lot of planets. So there's been a lot of planets in Capricorn over the past couple of years, all going through my fourth house, because my fourth house is ruled by Capricorn. So you want to have a look at the sign that's on your fourth house, right? And it's because remember, the opposite will be your midheaven. So of course my midheaven then must be ruled by Cancer, because my IC is ruled by Capricorn. So straight away we can straight away start to understand astrology. Doesn't have to be hard. It's just a language that we have to just start to understand. So when a lot of planets are going through Capricorn, like at the moment, we've still got Pluto in Capricorn, and, I've still got renovations. Our house flooded in the floods in Australia. We're going to have workmen here, like literally pulling down the basement of our house. Like we've got a 2-story house, it's internal stairs, and my daughter lives down there, and her whole room got, flooded, all furniture. So it's like the base of my chart with Capricorn, with Pluto, and I've got a Cancer moon. So Pluto's opposite my Cancer moon this year. So like, you can't make this shit up. Like it's the base of my chart. It's the base of my home, right? So that is what's being flooded out. So you're going to have these activations. When something activates your fourth house, you will find that there's a lot more energy that you're putting into your home. Again, renovations, things like that. Maybe you've got problems in your home. So, the lights are always blowing, or you've got leaky taps. You're going to see these things with transits, right? Like that's what's so crazily mind-blowing. So when we look at the physical home, the fourth house is a great first place to start. We want to look at that fourth house, and it will take you, and it will take you back to your childhood, because what did we learn when we were kids? Like our home, like that's my home. And did you move around a lot? Did you have a stable home? Were your parents still together? Like all of this stuff we can see in our chart and with what was being activated through our chart. So like I said, I had Uranus moving through my third house when I was around 9. So all of a sudden, astrology is just my language. It lands for me. It's like it's been downloaded over hundreds of lifetimes. I just get it. I'm into numerology. I'm into all of these things, right? That becomes my language. And growing up being the astrology person, it's not like a cool thing like it is these days. Like these days, it's like, oh my God, you're like into horoscopes. And it's like, well, this has been my whole life. Like I haven't just gotten on a trend, like it's not trust it. When you're a teenager, and even in my 20s, it wasn't cool to be into astrology. Let me just get that on tip. Uranus, this planet of disruption, awakening, and revolution, went through my fourth house. I went to 5 different primary schools in 6 years. I moved a lot. I had a very, very unstable childhood. So straight away, whilst I don't have planets in my natal chart in my fourth house all the time, Uranus moved through my fourth house when I was a young girl. So I had this very unstable, unsteady childhood. So we start to piece together like, anyone who has Uranus maybe in their fourth house, or Uranus moved through their fourth house when they were younger, there was some sort of instability. Maybe the parents broke up. Maybe something out of the blue happened, and my husband's got Uranus in the fourth house, and he had moves, his parents split up. So, I mean, it's all there. And that's what's so like great about astrology is that it's all there. So often when we kind of work with the fourth house, feelings of the past will come up, and I think that we then, we work that into our own homes, right? Like our homes then become this reflection of maybe our childhood, our past, what feels safe to us, what feels comfortable. Some people hoard, some people don't, and that's sort of a second house thing that I'll talk about in a moment as well. So, I'd love to even hear from you around like what you see in this sort of home space and how you feel that reflects people, and maybe, even just riffing from your own experience and your own childhood, because you don't have any planets in your fourth house, yet you're a home decorator. But I'm going to tell everyone why soon, but still just to know that, how you see this mirror image of the way you are, and just maybe from
Yeah,
your own
yeah, of
perspective.
course. So one thing I did want to mention before I go into my history is you just talking about, people growing up. And I get a lot of clients where I will show them a sofa or I will show them something and they automatically go, nope, nope, nope. That was in my childhood home. I do not want that. That was my parents. And it's just like, what? It's like this huge, like, trigger for them, and it's just like you wouldn't even know, until you show them this thing, and it flashes back to them. And a lot of times those childhood memories are so like deep and they're not supportive and strong, and it just like it transports them, and it's like, okay. And it's like I totally get it. And then we shift gears, and then it's like, okay, we're going into another direction. But I just wanted to say that because I've noticed that in many clients where it automatically takes them back, and it's incredibly crazy. So that makes a lot of sense, just what you were talking about that with that. Um, and you talking about my fourth, me growing up personally, when I grew up in San Diego, but I was born in Northern California and came down here, and we came down to San Diego and we didn't have a place to live. We lived in a shelter. And before that, we lived, when my parents were still together, in this teeny tiny house that was literally like maybe one bedroom. It was a studio, and it was behind my father's parents' house. And then we did find a house eventually, and it was a little tiny apartment, 2-bedroom apartment, probably under 1,000 square feet. And it was, five of us, me and my brothers. And there was at one point where I was then living in the living room. So I was sleeping on a little foam cot in the living room in junior high. And I would go visit my dad during the summer, and he always had the tiniest little places. It would be a studio that we would all sleep in, a teeny tiny little cottage. And there was one point where he was living in a camper. And then I'm thinking about stuff now, and I'm like, I'm so comfortable in little spaces. I'm almost obsessed with like tiny living, and like a dream of mine is to like live in a little Airstream. And I'm just like, oh my God, there must be some sort of thread connecting back to those spaces. I love tiny little spaces compared to like, I can't imagine living in like a giant house. Like that to me is just crazy.
Oh, that's amazing. And knowing that, so Rachel has a Leo IC, which means the sun rules her fourth house. Okay, so what we look at is if you don't have any planets placed in your fourth house, we look at the ruler of the fourth house, and that is the planet that rules the sign. So Leo is ruled by the sun. Okay, so to get a more depiction of, well, what is home? Because the fourth house, I just want to supersede and say it actually is property and real estate and acquiring property, landscaping, interior design. Like I'm still, it still is those physical aspects of physical house, right? But then I was looking at Rachel's chart, and it's like, oh, okay, so the sun rules her fourth house. Where is her sun? It's in the fifth house with 4 other planets in that fifth house, which is very much around creativity, right? So, and the sun is her sense of self. So growing up, like it was that source of self purpose, or what made you feel safe. And, interesting because you've got a Leo moon, so you've got this sort of mum and dad energy around, this Leonian archetype, right? Because the sun rules your fourth house of home and childhood and family, but then your sun's in the fifth house. And what you've done with that is make it creative. Like, simply putting it, is that Rachel has what's called a stellium in the fifth house, because there's 5 planets in the one sign, 5 planets in Libra, because her sun is in Libra. But that fifth house is that sense of like self-expression. It's actually the house that is ruled naturally by Leo. So it's a very expressive, she's got this very way of like, this is who I am and this is how I will show you who I am. And that is by beauty and design. And it could have been anything. It could have been music. It could have been acting. It could have been anything, but there is no way that Rachel couldn't be super creative with a stellium in the fifth house. It might still be her Achilles heel at times. It's sort of like, not an Achilles heel like it's my nemesis, but it's like, I can't not be that. When people are like, I want to be this, but then they'll change and then they'll constantly change their minds. Someone who knows who they are and knows their purpose, it would be hard to imagine doing anything else. And that's sort of, been my journey as well. Like, I would die if I couldn't, be reading astrology books or sharing astrology or even talking. My whole thing is around talking, teaching in the sort of the spiritual community. And I would die if I had to work a 9 to 5 and, work in a soul, like that wouldn't be me. But this is like this big stellium that you've got in your fifth house. It's like, yeah, sometimes it's this Achilles heel that's like, I'm always thinking about it. It's my whole life. But ultimately, sometimes it's like, oh, fuck, can I switch off? Like, can I switch off from this? And then you can be really like hard on yourself because you've got all these planets there too. Oh, it's not perfect and it needs to look like this, like if it's not like this, I can't share it, But even being okay with, and being okay with imperfection is a big lesson for you because of all the Leonian stuff going on for you. Stellium in the fifth house, which is naturally ruled by Leo, a Leo IC, so the sun ruling that part of home, and then this, you've got Mars and your moon conjunct in Leo as well. So there's this whole lot of, I need to express who I am, and you do that creatively. So it's really fascinating because it could have gone either way because you've also got Jupiter in your fifth house. So I was even wondering, like, big spaces, like, you just said you couldn't live in big spaces, but like there's also that spaciousness of like maybe you architecturally design really big spaces because I see you doing a lot of big spaces. That's very different to how you want to live, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Those are two completely different worlds, our personal space but having that expansion of, and then what I'm seeing almost like with creating big spaces is creating big community, creating, on a global scale for people to take like the knowledge and the things that I'm doing and wanting to teach other people how to, to design in a spiritual way, um, throughout the globe. Right. So there's like these different parts and pieces of this creative force that's happening with me.
Yes. And so we can then, because the fourth house is naturally ruled by the moon, and this is what's so in sync with and perfect with what Rachel does. She's like, what's home to you right now? It's all about home. It's all about like I said, the fourth house is interior decorating. And what's her job? It's interior decorating. The fourth house plays a strong role in Rachel's chart, despite the fact that she doesn't have any planets there. And that's what we must remember. Everyone gets caught up in, I don't have any planets in that house. And I'm just like, 12 houses, 10 planets, do the maths. There's always going to be empty houses. You do not have to have planets in every single house. And because the fourth house is ruled naturally by the moon, we then go and have a look at the moon and look at Rachel's moon. It's in Leo. So again, there's this extra connection to the fourth house. Home, solidity, and being, moving around a lot and not having maybe a stable, like a purchased house or something like that growing up has, would have meant that, you're expressing that now in your business, but also for your own family now, like structure and solidity and foundation is important, but it's going to be expressed in a really big way because it's very Leonian, it's going to be centered around, well, this is it's like an art piece. Leo is the artist. Leo is this dramatic artist who I find is so self-expressive and so creative that that's how you've remedied that, if that makes sense. We start to remedy our own childhood. We start to remedy our own past. We start to remedy that within our own charts through our own experiences. So we can heal those sorts of childhood things. However, often what happens is if there's a lot of planets in the fourth house, it means that actually is a very strong part of your journey in this lifetime. So we can see how Rachel's has turned out, for example, like it's coming all the way. Oh, it keeps coming back to Leo, sun in the fifth, moon in Leo, like it keeps coming back, right? However, someone with a lot of planets in the fourth might find a lot of family karma, like maybe you've been able to separate yourself. Like, I mean, we can say that we've all got family karma. I get that. But when you meet someone with a lot of planets in their fourth, and trust me, I have seen thousands of charts. I have read it. Yes, I've seen it all. I've got no planets in my fourth either. And that's why I was sharing earlier that home for me is the universe, because the ruler of my fourth house is in the 12th house. The 12th house is about spiritual connection, the divinity, meditation, spiritual stuff, like literally the universe. So even when I read that years ago, I cried. I was like, oh my God, like, yes, like I've never felt at home with family, but I feel at home with Mother Earth and with the universe. So family isn't my thing in this lifetime. Okay. And that's what we see in our charts. We all have different, we all have different things, right? Like we all have different lessons and learnings and blessings. So when the fourth house is empty, we can navigate like, oh, okay, this is how it showed up for Rachel. This is how it showed up for me. But if you've got a lot of planets in your fourth house, you will be entangled and enmeshed in your family somehow. There is no other way. Like I know someone with 4 or 5 planets in their fourth house and family works with them. All the kids are still at home. They're like 20s. They're like every single thing is connected to family. Like it's like an octopus, right? There is their land, like they've got family living in other houses. Like it blows my mind to see how accurate and literal it is. Like that's the thing that's mind blowing is how literal it is. Yeah. And what you can also find is these beautiful sort of karmic generational patterns with fourth house stuff. So I know, I know someone who all 3 of her children have the same planet in their fourth house because that's how they felt their childhood was. And I was just like, of course, they've all got that planet in the fourth house. Yeah. So you start to see this karmic pattern. And even for me, I don't have any planets in my fourth and none of my 3 daughters do. And I know because of the work that I've done that I've actually broken an ancestry karmic line for my family, my mother line. I didn't grow up with my mother, my birth mother. So I've broken something. So none of my girls will carry that on now. So you can actually start to see these patterns and these, it's so incredible to look at these sorts of things as well, because I think that still, again, is a representation of home, like what home is for you, and how home felt for you growing up. And you will notice, Chiron, if you've got Chiron in the fourth house, again, there's more of a karmic wound that you're carrying. I know several generations who all have Chiron in their fourth house. So they're actually carrying the karmic wound. So interestingly enough, maybe the next generation, they might not have it there. So it's so fascinating to look at, how it goes in the generations, how it goes within your own family unit, because the fourth house is mind-blowing in that it really is the foundation of your life. And that really is our anchor in our home, right? Like it is the foundation of our life. So of course, for some people, they might have a lot of, planets in their fourth house and they move homes a lot still as they're adults. They build homes, that's their job. Right? They're builders. So they're literally building. So we can see how it's happened for you, that it's sort of branched out a little bit. It's very creative. But for some, it's so literal that they're so attached and entwined to their family that it's sort of like they can't get away, even if they tried. And I watch this. Like it's mind blowing.
Crazy. So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at my kids' charts and see like what's happening there. Look at my husband's chart. But I do want to venture into the second house that you spoke about with possessions, and because I find that super fascinating, especially when I'm working with people and trying to break patterns within their homes, and people come to me during transitions. They come to me when there's a divorce, when someone has passed, when there's a new baby coming, when we're changing houses. So um yeah, I would love to just kind of explore this second house situation.
So we'll do that too. I just wanted to quickly, lastly, say around the fourth house is I've written here like the planets here will show if you're happy in the birthplace or more successful moving away from the birthplace as well. So certain planets will show that it's actually good to be away from the birthplace, like you succeed more if you move away, or you will stay hooked into the birthplace, like you will stay hooked into where you grew up. Planets in the fourth can support or drag you down. And again, there's some sort of like trauma or triggers here, which we've already talked about. But, even, people coming to you at a transition, ultimately when the IC, which is the angle of the home, is hit with a big planet. So Pluto hit my IC and my dad died. So for me, my dad was like my mum because he's the one who took me on, because the fourth house is also, it's like the birth of life. So it's like the beginning. It's like it's childhood, it's those sorts of things, but then it's also the decay. So, fourth house transits will show those things that you've just said. Oh, I've got a divorce, or, there's other things, of course, relationship house and stuff like that. But the fourth house can really show like we're moving, like a transit happening to the fourth house where we're moving, we're selling, we're buying, so or any sorts of those property things. And then that second house we move to is like, well, what's in the house? Like it's the second house rules your values. What's important to you. And for some people it's stuff, right? Like it's stuff, like they want money, they want status, they want you to know that I've got the Merc and I've got the fucking this and I've got the fucking that, and it's all about the stuff, right? And you will find certain planets in the second house, like say Neptune, for example. Neptune in the second house, they want to spend their money on like spiritual, like they're not really attached to money. They have a little bit of a very foggy, confused relationship with money, because the second house is money. It's money, it's possessions, it's what you love, it's what you find appealing. Yeah. So we've looked at fourth being that comfort, sort of, who you are when no one else is around. That's your moon sign. So you can sort of unpack your moon sign to get a really good picture of your fourth house stuff as well. Then we move to the second house, which is literally about literal stuff. So what's in your house? What's your relationship to money? Because obviously money can buy things. Money can be spent on things. We can purchase things that we like. So you can sort of get a bit of an idea of who someone is by what's in their second house. So, for me, for example, I've got Uranus in my second house. Uranus is that sort of like, Uranus in the second house will show that their values are very different, I think, to what society thinks. Like money would never, like someone having something that's expensive or a car or earning a lot of money, like that doesn't appeal to me. Like that doesn't turn me on. Like I'm just like, whatever. Like what's your sign and who's your soul? Like I don't really give a shit about stuff. But when I look at this, when I look at Uranus in the second house, it means that I've got an eclectic sort of palette as well. Like, it's similar. I've got planets up in my lounge room. I've got crystals. I've got flowers and plants and lots of candles, photos, those sorts of things. I'm not sparse, like maybe someone with Saturn in their second house, like they're a little bit more limited, like they don't have as much stuff because they've had they've had a different relationship, but it's interesting too, like the second house is like, what, do you possess a lot of things? Are you a hoarder? Are you a minimalist? How much stuff do you have and what kind of shit is it? Like, is it just, the hoarding, we might see a lot of planets in the second house with, someone who maybe hoards a lot of stuff, like hold on. Even the moon in the second house can be a little bit like that because the moon is very sentimental. So if the moon's in the second, I can't throw that away because that happened back in 1924. And if I chuck that away, like I can't get rid of it, So ultimately, the second house is ruled by Venus. So we can again look to Venus in our chart to see, well, what kind of things do we find beautiful? Like what are we attracted to, And you will find that, so you're looking at the planets in the second house to sort of go, well, what sort of stuff do I have? Is it random? Do I have no planets in the second house? Again, you would look to your second house ruler. But then you can go to Venus and go, well, what's the things that make me feel good? What's the things that are beautiful to me? Because that's what Venus is beauty and appeal. Yeah. Visual.
Yeah.
I want things to look visually beautiful because I have Venus in Taurus. So my Venus is at home in her home sign, but she's in the 8th house. So again, there's this like occult, like magic, like place for me. So my stuff's all very witchy and incense and, stuff like that. Like that's what's beautiful to me. Hundreds of candles being lit in my house. That's what's beautiful to me, But for some people, that's not what it's going to be like. It might be completely different. Their Venus might not be in a happy sign like Taurus or Libra, where she's happy, right? Venus in Pisces is where she's the most happy. She's exalted. She's like the queen at the table. And, you might find that they have like a lot of, paintings of mermaids and blue and, very oceanic. You're going to start to understand the archetype of each of the signs. And then our Venus represents that for you. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think my Venus is in Scorpio. So is there any insight on that? Does that mean that I'm just like totally into goth and like dark and
No, absolutely. There is that sense of, it's deep, it's intense, but it's in the 6th house for you. And the 6th house is the house of daily rituals. So lighting a candle, pulling a card is occult. It's the dark side of the moon sort of stuff. And it needs to happen every day for you. Okay, so Venus being in the 6th house, like these daily rituals are very important for you. And, we've already talked about like even how you do the podcast, it's very ritualistic. Hello, it's about routine for you. Your routine and ritual is what keeps you anchored in. Whereas for some people, like they might not have a routine in their ritual. It might not even be about ritual for them, but that's what you find beautiful. That connects you into your day. It connects you into your cycle of your day, and you pull a card every day and share it with people. So that shows that's what you find harmonious. That's what you find balances you. And that 6th house, like I said, the 6th house is our everyday stuff. It's our devotion. It's our rituals. It's our sense of service. It's also our house of health as well. But the 6th house for me is like you get up, you brush your teeth, you do the things, right? Like it's the house and what you've got to do. And for you, you've got this Venus in Scorpio. You've also got Uranus there in Scorpio as well. So again, it's that very occult-like, your daily ritual might look very different to someone else's, because for someone else's, it might be like, I get up and I do a green juice and I do 15 star jumps and I, it's very clinical, or it's not very deep, like I'm not saying that's not deep, but, it's very different than scorpionic, it's very different to the Scorpio side of things. Yeah. Yeah. So it's amazing that you can unpack even just your Venus to have a look at, well, what is those things that, connect you into what you find beautiful, and then coupling that with your second house, because we want to work with both, just like we want to work with the 4th house, we want to work with the moon. The moon, looking at your moon house and sign, again, will give you that sense of, this is where I feel safe. Like I feel safe, your moon's in your 3rd house. So communication and talking about your emotions and talking makes you feel like, yeah, okay, like the moon is in her house of joy in the 3rd house, which again, the 3rd house is similar to the 6th house. Rituals, daily stuff, the things that you do. So the 3rd house moon is someone who again, very similar to the Venus in the 6th house, who has these like, I do a full moon ritual every full moon. I do a new moon ritual every new moon. Like that is a part of your cycle. The moon is in her house of what's called joy in the 3rd house. She loves to be there, And again, we've got this 3rd and 6th house stuff going on, which to me, they're two similar houses, because they're literally also about our routine and ritual. So even going to the 6th house, you can start to see, well, what's my routine and ritual? Which of course you're going to start in your home. So there's so many different facets, obviously to astrology, so many layers and but even just looking at the home stuff, when we look at the 4th house, we look at the 2nd house for sort of what stuff you've got, what are your literal possessions like? Some people have secondhand possessions their whole life. They never buy anything new. That's going to show up in the 2nd house.
Yeah. What planet would be there that would kind of signify that?
Well, it sort of depends. Saturn always feels like, again, restriction, like I don't have the money to go and buy something new.
Okay.
Saturn in the second house can be feeling inhibited by money. So obviously, if you feel inhibited by money, you might not go and buy new things. I think, Uranus is like a little bit eclectic, so you could collect things. I've got like a cool set of old scales from like a secondhand shop. Like they're so rad. Like they cost me like $80 or something, but they're literal scales. Like, and because I've got lots of Libra in my chart as well. So again, like Uranus would show like a different sort of style. Like it doesn't always have to be. Venus in the second house might love new, really love beautiful things. Like constantly have to be surrounded by beauty because Venus would be in her home in the second house. But then we've got to look at what sign she's in, and then we've got to look at what other planets she's talking to. And that's where astrology goes deeper and deeper and deeper, because I can say all of this and you might go, oh no, but I'm like this. But it's like, oh, because that planet's talking to another planet. Like the planets are also talking to other planets and pulling in on other, I'm having a hard conversation over there with that planet, but a good conversation over there with that planet. So there's always so many layers to astrology. Really just at the fundamental level, start to understand these nuances, like start to understand the language. Fourth house could be what we've spoken about, the second house. And then, I think the sixth house is nice to even have just mentioned because it is about ritual, our daily rituals and how we do things.
It's so fascinating. I just want to I almost want to go back and look at, clients' charts and see what's happening there. And even going forward, if they want me to come in and look at the chart and see what's happening and the communication there, I just think that, and just to get into it, this deeper level and understanding of, okay, this is what's happening here. And that's why certain things are, resonating and why some things are getting pulled back. And I'm almost curious to see if there's if there's a pattern almost with the people that are coming to get design help. Because like you were talking about with Saturn in the second house, they probably aren't going to maybe hire a designer to bring in, new things, right? They may want somebody to come in and do like a refresh or repurpose what they've already got.
With, and then the exciting other layers of that is that, well, what if they have like a really great planet come and move through their second house for 6 or 7 months or a year or whatever that planet's moving, then all of a sudden say it's Jupiter moving through the second house. Jupiter brings benefits. So maybe Jupiter brings money to that person and then they decide to do something with it, so we can see all of, we can see with the transits, which is what's happening to your chart by the cosmic codes that are going on up above as of today. Like right now, today, we can go, oh, this house is being activated for you. Even when you're a certain age, a certain house is activated for you. So when you're 39, for all of us, when we're 39, our fourth house is activated. So all of a sudden, this is what's called your perfected years. So our yearly annual perfections really also make a huge difference as well, because if you're a certain age, second house, so obviously 39, 38, so 37. So 37, 39, the second and the fourth house are activated. I'm about to turn 41. My sixth house will become activated. So my daily rituals and routines and daily life, that will be of more importance. So when you're having a second house perfected year, like that would be a year of like looking at your money, looking at what you're spending, looking at your stuff. You might even move, you might buy real estate. Same with your fourth house. You might, again, move, have renovations. Look at your family, do those sorts of things. So the activations that happen are just as important as understanding your own birth chart. Like we understand that, but then sometimes something doesn't make sense until it makes sense, until something is there to highlight that and to bring that to the forefront. It's like, oh yes, actually 39, I sold my house. At 39, I had a, flood. I needed to renovate, like whatever that is. At 39, you will know something will have happened at 39 that changed sort of maybe the course of your life or change that anchor point in your life.
I love that you said that, because at 39, that's when I moved. That's when I moved to North, where I'm at now, closer to the water.
Of course. We see these points in the chart and they're big activations. And so those sorts of things would be interesting to look at in your work as well. Like, oh, well, actually in 2 years you've got this happening, or, oh, are you thinking of selling next year because this is being activated and we could spruce up the house or whatever, like this infinite possibilities. But it just still, after feels like eons and eons and eons still blows my mind. Like even to come here and talk about like the home, you know, like astrology can be weaved into everything, like because our chart will show us what is of value to us, what sort of, you know, things do we buy and collect and purchase, you know, what sort of family life did we have, you know, what does home mean for us? We can see that in our own chart just again by basically, you know, looking at that fourth house, looking at that second house, you know, and then again, you know, I love the sixth house point when you brought up your Venus. I'm like, yes, of course, daily rituals. That's a part of what you do every day, which is a part of your home life, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you say activate, when something's activated, what does that mean? And how can somebody notice that something's activated in their chart?
So when you go to astro.com and once you type in all of your birth details, if you click the with transits button, that's showing you on the outside of the circle where everything is today. And so for me, awareness is always like the key, right? Like when we're aware of something, we can't change the trajectory. We can't go, oh, Pluto's going through my fourth house right now. It's like, okay, I can't change that Pluto's going through my fourth house, but what I will understand and know is family life, what it means to be a daughter, what it means to be a mother, my physical and literal home, my relationships with my children, all those things, they will change. And you can't make that shit up because my dad died and my dad was like my mother, you know, so my family completely disintegrated once my father died because I don't have any contact with my birth mother now. And even the family I grew up with, which was like a step family, like that all dissolved. Yeah. So I had to learn to reparent myself. I had to learn to, I had to learn to let go of what family even was. And even though it was dysfunctional and it wasn't happy, I still had to learn to let that go, and yes, my family is my husband and my 3 daughters. But the thing is that all this happened when Pluto moved into my 4th house. So when you understand where planets are moving, especially those transpersonal planets, Neptune, Uranus, Pluto, because they're very slow. So they're going to move through a house very, very slowly, like for 15 years, So they're going to change the whole landscape of a house for you. For some people, they will never have Pluto move through their 4th house in their entire life. So that's what's so unique and incredible about our own micro activations. And that's what's cool about it is that you will never have Pluto move through your 4th house. That will never happen for you because you were born with Pluto in your 5th house. And as we speak now, Pluto is only in your 8th house and you will pass away and die like Pluto, like before he even gets to your 10th house, or in your 10th or 11th house. So because he takes so slow to move through each sign, but then you've got quicker transits, like Mercury moves very quickly. The sun obviously moves. So when the sun is moving through the 4th house, pay attention to what's being illuminated, So for you, it's Leo season. So it really is just looking at these basics. And I'm a very big, sun illuminating person. Like what I do is like follow the season of the sun. The solar alchemy is important because the sun is only in one sign for a year, for 1 month a year. So you want to follow and track the sun around your chart. Of course, people like to do that with the moon, the moon trackers. But the moon moves around your entire chart in 28 days. So it's very, very quick. Whereas the sun takes a whole year, hence you have a solar return and so on and so forth. So once you start to understand what the planets are doing in the skies as we speak now, then we know, well, it's Leo season. So every Leo season for you, your 4th house becomes activated. So what happens then? It's at a time of, for you guys, it's winter. So it's at a time of where you're feeling actually a little bit introvert. Like you're like, I'm just going to potter around and drink red wine and, create some beautiful online things so I don't have to go out much. Like you start to look at, well, what is the season of that cycle for me? So pay attention to the, what people call the star signs, but the sun signs of when it is Leo season for you, when it is Cancer season for you, because Cancer season is your 2nd house. So again, it's that sense of nurturing. So the moon actually rules your 2nd house. Your moon is in Leo. Leo rules your 4th house. So there again, we've got this connection to the second beauty, what feels good for Rachel, because it's her moon sign. So Cancer season and Leo season are those 2 seasons with your 2nd and your 4th house. So you have your own cycle. And when we live by our own cycle and our own rhythm, life is seamless. And of course, everything is crazy and we can't change out there, but
Yeah.
we can change in here. And when we understand our own cycles and rhythms of our own chart, we can become at home and at peace with those. Because yes, there might be some turbulence. Yes, there might be a death or something unexpected or a flood or whatever it is. But when we understand the chart, there's something around it that's soothing. That's like, okay, I'm just, this is a part of my cycle. This is a part of my story. This is a part of my growth. You know, for me, life is brutal and life is beautiful. And they're both just as valid. If we're only ever trying to have beautiful and, bypass the brutal parts, that's where brutal hurts more, because when we accept the brutality and we can see it all in the chart. I just did a chart yesterday and she's had like 2 car accidents with a baby in like fucking 2 months or 3 months or something. And she's got those transits happening there. So they're not negative. And if I had have seen her before that, I could have said, be careful. But the thing is that, everything still is in divine orchestration of what's being played out in our chart. And it's still just like I'm always still like, this is so amazing. Still blows my mind. Still.
Yeah, it is amazing. That's so cool. And you have a program, right? A self-guided program for people to learn how to read their charts.
Absolutely. Yep. It's all online. So you just purchase it from my website, tiarnie.com.au. It's a 7-week module 1 course. So really just helping you to understand the language. So you can look at your chart and go, that house is ruled by this, so you're understanding signs, planets, houses, I've chucked in like day or night chart, chucked in some retrograde stuff. It's packed to the brim. It's over 10 hours of just me like this, very excited, talking about astrology. And it's like 7 weeks. You get notes, very basic, simple to the point notes every week, and then take copious amounts of notes as you're watching, because that's what I am told. And it's just great to start to get a feel for the language and to be able to, for me, it's about looking at your own chart. Astrology takes decades to even become an astrologer because it's so layered and intricate. So the course is really set up for personal use, for you to look at your chart, look at your children's charts, look at your husband's chart, use podcasts like this to weave in that sort of stuff. That's what's cool about this, is that I could go on any sort of podcast, parenting, home life, spirituality, sex, whatever you want to talk about, it's all in our chart. It can't not be, because the chart represents the totality of all of those themes and areas in our life. So yeah, I just love my Mod 1 course because it just really helps people to understand the language a little bit more and look at their chart and go, boom, I know that I've got a stellium in my 5th house and the 5th house is this, so to really be able to be fluid with that. Yeah, so that's a cool course. Yeah. And one of the best ways to work with me in a way, because I'm fully booked up for the year, and I've got people booking into February of 2023. So if people want to work one-on-one with me, it's not an immediate thing. So my course, my 7-week course, gives you a really great structure to start to look at your own chart. And then I do masterclasses as well. If you're following me on Instagram or you've signed up to my newsletter, I'm doing random masterclasses that are just a 2-hour masterclass to help, teach a section. And right now, just before we go into eclipse season, I have an eclipse masterclass on my website as well for $30, 2 hours. And I'm just jamming on what these eclipses mean for the next, especially this year. And we're just about to be in that. And they're very important eclipses, as we can already feel this year, the Scorpio South Node, the Taurus North Node. And again, I think it's actually so perfect with this podcast, is that Taurus, the North Node's in Taurus, and Taurus is ruled by Venus, and that takes us back to that 2nd house. And Venus is also about this simplicity, and getting back to your organic nature. And I think that when you look at your 2nd house too, how can you strip it back to what is really of value to you? What is really of worth? For me, what is a real value of me is my time, because I can never get my time back. So for me, if I'm spending time or doing something that's spending my time, that's a value. So for me, when people talk about self-care and they're like, I got a pedicure or whatever, I'm like, no, self-care for me is saying no to having coffee with those bitches. I'm not having coffee with you bitches. I don't have the fucking time to waste on your shit. So I would much rather be alone than wasting my time doing shit that doesn't matter. And that's sort of how, I mean, I don't even waste my time watching movies that shit. Like, I'm like, oh, stop, delete. Go. I mean, I'll watch the same thing over and over again. And that's a very Taurus thing. Like, I'm very comfortable watching, oh, I'll just watch Stranger Things again for the third time. Oh, I'll just watch Seinfeld again for the millionth time. But I'm like, it's quality. Like, I'm quality over quantity, darlings. But I love that the North Node is directing us there. It's actually nearly like coming home to yourself, going in Taurus, coming to your own nature, your own sovereignty. And I think that that really even gels in with this podcast as well. That's where the North Node is. That's where we're all being directed to be over this next 18 months.
Oh, that's awesome. So when does eclipse season start?
We're in it now. The first eclipse is for us down under is the 1st of May, but I think for you guys it's the 30th of April. And that is the new moon eclipse in Taurus. So yeah, like my nodal masterclass is called the Love and Death Nodal Portal. That is on my website, and you can, download that. Again, it's just straight into your inbox, and you can watch it immediately. Keep referring to it so you know where the eclipses are happening in your own chart, because they're big ones. Like, they're very big, important eclipses this year because they're in fixed signs. We've got Uranus in Taurus, which is a fixed sign. We've got Saturn in Aquarius, which is a fixed sign. So a lot of structures are changing. All we have to do is sort of look around. So we need to understand where that's happening in our own chart, because a lot of people jump on these, like, Instagram weighing, oh, it's eclipse season, that they're manifesting. You don't manifest on eclipse season. Well, I've actually got this cool product, which is these candles being made. These have been specifically made for eclipse season to burn during eclipse season. So it's not a ritual. Okay. It's not something you manifest. You don't want to manifest on eclipse season because it's the sun and the moon are like being swallowed. So there's there's an energy of, like, it's karma because the nodes are involved. So the eclipse is the ritual. Just having the eclipse and being present and aware that what drops in is the ritual. And so I made two of these, or my girlfriend made them, but I came up with concepts, crystals, the handouts and stuff. So I'm not sure if they can be sent to them, but they're so beautiful. And then to burn during the whole eclipse period, because from the 30th for America and the 1st, we dive into what's called the eclipse sandwich. So we have the new moon eclipse in Taurus, and then the full moon eclipse in Scorpio, which will be on the 16th of May. So that's like the eclipse sandwich. That 2 weeks is potent. But the 2 weeks before, which is now the build-up, we're in eclipse season. Right. So it's very important to understand eclipses, to have reverence for them, and to just, you don't need to do anything. You just need to be, and be very aware and be careful. Like, eclipses are disruptive. They're chaotic energy. So, you be extra careful driving, you be extra careful cutting something in the kitchen. It's just, and for me, when we have what I perceive as accidents, for me, we're out of alignment because we're not paying attention. We're not switched on. We're having an accident. If we're having accidents, we're having multiple accidents. If we're reversing into a letterbox, if we're, running a red light or any of those things, we are not switched on and paying attention. And in eclipse season, it's much more important to be switched on and pay attention.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, I noticed that even just, in life where I'm just like, you run into something or you almost hit something and it's just like I'm not in my body. And it's just like, okay, I have to like realign what's happening here because we can totally just go off the rails and be out there. So Tiarnie, what do you have brewing? What's coming up for you? What are you doing for the rest of this year, or what are you working on? I'd love to know.
Well, I'm just about to take a month of clients to write my 2023 energy survival kit. So I write a 200-page energy kit for each year. It's like a book. It's like my work of art each year. My 2022 kit is awesome. It's available on my website as well, and you can just do the digital because I, just with shipping and stuff like that. But and then you can just print it off yourself, and so that's like that's a big thing. I've got some masterclasses that I want to record. That they'll be on my website as well. So it's really just all astrology as usual. It's the only thing I do, but I'm looking forward to my 2023 energy survival kit. It's very, you're going to love it because it's very dark. It's very I've got some aesthetics for it for my designer at the moment. very skulls, tarots, red candles, because we're going into a very epic year, something next year that's happening that hasn't happened in 248 years. We've got some very big things coming up. So I love to prepare everyone. It's a month by month workbook journal where you can write. It's got all the new and full moons, Mercury retrograde spreads, solstice and equinox spreads. At this point, it is only, it's southern hemisphere, as in with the dates, but of course, the spread's still the same. So it's like if it's a solstice down here, it's still a solstice up there. So that's sort of what's on the cards for me this year. Finishing that off and doing some more little master classes, because everyone's sort of been raving about those, because it's short and sharp, it's 2 hours, it's learning something about the chart. So yeah.
Yeah, I love you. I just love your to the point, short and sweet. Like, let's just get the information and move on.
Get it out, be aware, be empowered. Forewarned is forearmed. Like, you want to know the stuff that's going on so that you can prepare for what's coming.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, I love rituals. So, do you have any rituals or, I feel like I've just been like totally called out with you reading my chart in that way.
See, you've got stuff in your sixth house, whereas I don't. So my rituals are a lot more, they're not, I'm not pulling a card every day. I like to make sure I do a little bit of breath work every day. So even if it's just 5 minutes. So for me, doing some inhales and some pursed lips exhales. I've been watching the sunset a lot. So my rituals they change because Neptune rules my sixth house, and Neptune is spiritual. Of course, Neptune is like meditation and yoga and spirituality, but Neptune's in my third house. So me talking is like my ritual. Me doing a lot of writing, feet on the earth. Sometimes it's sunset, sometimes it's sunrises, but it's a lot more changeable for me. There was a time where I was meditating every single day for years, and I stopped that. And there was a time where I was doing the 5 Tibetan rites. I stopped that. And so for me, it's like Neptune. It's very changeable. I find that my rituals can be, when I hang the washing out, when I wash a cup up, when I pour my tea, when I drink my tea. For me, a ritual on the daily is being present. So that's my daily ritual, is being present with what I'm doing. But then when I go outside of that, it will be, watching the sunset, doing some breath work. That's probably about it at the moment. And next year, if you ask me, it might change, right?
I love it. Well, I love that your rituals change, because I feel like sometimes we get put in this box and it's like, well, I have to do this one thing like every day and it has to be like this. And then that's where we stifle this creativity and we become hard on ourselves and there's no grace or compassion. And it's like, no, like this can shift and you can play with it and you can experiment. So I love that you shared that with all of us, because I think that will really resonate with a lot of people, just so that they're not so hard on ourselves.
I always tell, my clients or my listeners on my podcast, the same sort of thing as well. Like, don't be stifled or rigid around what you do. Like, it doesn't have to be the same every single day. For some people, exercising every day or meditating every day is a part of that. And that's great, as long as as long as you're not distracting yourself from living your life. I know some people who literally sit in a ritual for 3 or 4 hours a day. I mean, obviously they don't have children because you can't do that. But to sit in a ritual and make this cacao and sit there and then to do the journaling every day. Look, I'm not dissing it, but fuck, like you're distracting yourself from life as well. Like, there can be magic in just, getting up and sitting with a cup of tea for 10 minutes like that. If you can find magic in that sort of stuff, you've hit it. But if you're constantly having to be outside of yourself and distract yourself from life for hours, I'm talking about, I know people that it does. It literally takes them 3 hours to get going because they've got all their things to do. And I'm like, oh, that's just too stifling for me, So don't be hard on yourself about your own rituals. It doesn't have to look like anyone else's, even if it's just breath work for 5 minutes, that's not bad. That's something.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I didn't realize you had a podcast. So can you share with all of us what that is so that we can start listening and find you? And
yes. So my podcast, I've much more upped the ante. I've had it for a little while, but I was not regular in it. But I realized that it's called Tiarnie Talks Astrology. But I realized that if I'm calling myself Tiarnie Talks, I need to talk more.
Yeah.
And because I was getting into that, again, that perfect thing, like I don't have anything that's edited. I literally sit in my closet. I don't have an intro. I don't have an outro. I have absolutely nothing. It's me sitting in my closet, plugging in the thing and just talking and riffing once a week about the astrology that's coming up. Sometimes it's a little astrology lesson. Um, I'll be talking about like whatever it is, like whatever's present, I'll be talking about it. So I've been on there doing, once a week astrology podcast now for a little while this year, and I'm really loving it. I'm getting so much feedback, which is awesome. And that's just to be found in like Apple and Spotify. It's everywhere. So I love it. It's so much fun. But yeah, it's not polished. And I was waiting like, oh, I need someone to do intro music and outro music and do the thing. And I'm like, just fucking start. Like it's not happening right now. And maybe that's what makes mine very different to everyone else's, because I literally plug it in and go, hey lovers, like that's it. Like that's what you get from me. Like I'm not even prepping you for what I'm going to talk about. I just dive right in, and I was clunky as fuck doing it yesterday, but I showed up and I did it. So yeah, it's actually been such a joy to be doing the podcast. I'm really loving it.
That's so awesome. And I feel like that's just you. Like you get to come into your world and we get to experience you and you don't need anything else. I absolutely love that. It's totally your style.
It totally is. I mean, I'm so unedited. And I mean, even my courses, my master classes, my 7-week course, it's all unedited. Like it's just me sitting down talking. And, back when I wasn't even savvy to like pause things, or I didn't even use Zoom. So I wasn't even showing people charts. I was like leaving and going, I need to go to the toilet, and walking to the toilet and coming back. Like I've professionalized it up a little bit from that. It's got the same background. I'm wearing the same thing. So this streamlined, but I've also realized that, and as we get older too, like I don't need to be like everyone else. Like this is like my medicine's just being unedited and me, and you just become totally okay with that. Like as you get older, you're just like, like I'm good. I'm good.
But I think that's what I mean. That to me is like what attracted me to you. It's just like you just are who you are and you own it. And there's like, I just love it. It's like I feel like we're like great bestest friends, and I've never like met you in person, and I feel like I've known you and connected with you on such a deep level because of how you show up.
I mean that realistically has a little bit teary, but like that realistically has been the best like compliments that I've got from people, because they meet me in person and then they're like real nervous to meet me, and then when they realize that I'm just the same as I am here on an Instagram story, on my podcast, on Facebook, where a lot of people on socials are very different to what they're like in real life. I don't know how to be anyone other than myself. So when you do meet me, I'm just the same. I had one lady say, I didn't realize, like, I was looking forward to how your energy is in real life. If it's the same, and it's like, it's 20 times better. And I was just like, oh, it's a lovely compliment, but I don't know how to be anything other than myself. Like if I try and put on an act, that's when I wouldn't, that wouldn't work for me. So it always is the most humbling compliment that people feel like they can connect with me because I'm just a human and we can be best friends even though we haven't met. I mean, I'm telling people I love them all the time. Like, I love you. I think you're amazing. And I love listening to your voice because I love an American accent. So I always find it great to, to chat with you. And it's been such a beautiful sphere.
Yeah, right back at you. I would love with you and everything that you're doing. And it's so funny that you talk about American accent. Of course, we don't hear it, but I love your accent, and it's very, very cool.
It's like, oh, what are you hearing? Because I just feel like I sound like Fran, like the nanny, like Fran Drescher, like I just. But then I hear like occasionally, I think I've listened to like one of my podcasts. I'm not someone who listens to anything that I do, but I did listen. I'm like, oh, like when I was like, oh, my voice is a lot like not deep, but my voice is like this smooth, and I was like, oh, my voice actually sounds okay. I mean, I'm all high pitch and I'm a high pitch witch, like, and I'm like high pitch witch, I'm a cackler, but I just think it's so fascinating that we hear these accents for other people, but we can never understand why they like our accent and we like theirs, but we're like, what are you even hearing?
Oh, goodness. Okay, great. So I'm going to put all of the ways to connect with you in the show notes, your podcast, your classes, everything. Because people, I just have a feeling that everyone's just going to adore you and love you as much as I do. So thank you so much for being here and taking the time. And I know it's, a different time zone for you and you've got so much going on and you're starting your day. So I just really appreciate you starting your day with me.
It just feels like the best day. Now I can go and take chart notes and see a client, and it's just amazing. I'm so happy to have started my day like this. So thank you for having me on, Rachel.
Amazing. Thank you. You've been listening to the Holistic Interior Design Podcast. If it's one that you have been enjoying, please share with anyone else that you think can benefit from this knowledge and leave us a 5-star review that helps us get seen and found by other new and aspiring interior designers. And if you're looking for mentorship, I invite you to join our club here at the Design Coven. It's a bridge between school and real life interior design. We get in much deeper there. We have virtual and in-person events. So everyone is welcome. You don't need to have a design degree to be part of it, just an interest in holistic interior design. I also want to thank our editor, Marcy Ferry, and lastly, Kinseth Thibodeau, who is our music composer. Until next time, be well, and we will see each other soon.